London, 1888. The wet, foggy streets of Whitechapel, where a dark and invisible shadow moves through the narrow alleys and old buildings. A man whose name was never revealed, yet his presence was etched into people's hearts like an endless nightmare. Who was he? A mad surgeon, a skilled butcher, or perhaps an ordinary man who walked among the crowd with a calm demeanor, only to transform into one of history's most savage killers by night. This unknown killer brutally murdered 5 women in just a few months. But what turned this case into one of the most terrifying mysteries in history was the method of the murders, the cryptic messages, and the police's inability to solve the case. I am Elias Blackwood, and this is Crime Darkroom, a place where you can step into the darkness. This story began in a crowded neighborhood filled with poverty and crime, Whitechapel, a district in the heart of London that had become a refuge for immigrants, street women, and the homeless. Due to its poor economic conditions, the area was plagued by crime, and many of its residents struggled to survive. But amid this chaos, a ruthless killer emerged from the darkness of the night, striking fear even into the hearts of other criminals. The first victim of Jack the Butcher, Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly, was found on August 31st, 1888. She was a street woman who was murdered near a railway station in Whitechapel. Her body was discovered at 3:40 a.m. by a man named Charles Cross. Her throat had been severely slashed and deep wounds covered her body. This murder marked the beginning of a series of crimes, each more brutal than the last. Just 1 week after Mary Ann, the second victim was found. Annie Chapman, whose maiden name was Eliza Ann Smith, was murdered on September 8, 1888. Her body was discovered at 6 a.m., and like Mary Ann Nichols, her throat had been brutally slashed. But, this time, the killer took things a step further. Annie Chapman's abdomen had been completely cut open, and her uterus had been gruesomely removed. This murder made it clear that Jack the Butcher was not only a ruthless killer, but also someone with precision and a deep knowledge of human anatomy. These murders deeply perplexed the London police, prompting a large-scale investigation. However, Jack the Butcher remained hidden from both the authorities and the public. Around this time, letters began arriving at newspapers, written by someone who identified himself as Jack the Butcher. At first, these letters were dismissed as a hoax or media deception, but when one of them was accompanied by a human kidney, there was no longer any doubt. London was facing a savage serial killer. Perhaps one of Jack the Butcher's most mysterious crimes was the murder of Elizabeth Stride on September 30th, 1888. That night, while the city was still asleep, he struck again, taking the life of another street woman. Her throat had been slashed, and the cause of death was the severing of her main neck artery. But on the same night, another murder occurred. Catherine Eddowes, another street woman and one of Jack's victims, was found near the site of Elizabeth Stride's murder. Her throat had also been cut, and her abdomen was brutally torn open. These 2 murders became known in criminal history as the double event. But one of the most horrific murders was that of Mary Jane Kelly on November 9th, 1888. Her body was discovered after 10:45 a.m. Her throat had been slashed down to the spine, and her abdomen was completely emptied. Her heart and uterus were never found. This murder was profoundly shocking, leading many to believe that Jack the Butcher was not just an ordinary killer, but a cunning and terrifying figure who hunted in the darkness of the night. But Jack the Butcher was not just a savage killer, he was a mystery. His case was never solved, and no clue ever surfaced to reveal his identity. Some investigators even speculated that Jack the Butcher might have been a surgeon or a doctor, as the murders were carried out with remarkable precision and a thorough knowledge of human anatomy. This theory helped solidify his image in the eyes of the public as an intelligent and dangerous individual. During this period, widespread media coverage of the murders and Jack the Butcher's letters to the newspapers drew global attention. The media used the story as a tool to attract audiences and boost circulation. Yet unanswered questions remained. Who was Jack the Butcher? Why was he never caught? And why do these murders still remain an unsolved mystery in the world of crime? The legend of Jack the Butcher continues to this day. Even video games, such as Sherlock Holmes vs. Jack the Ripper, have explored the case. In these games, you play as Detective Sherlock Holmes, delving into the mystery of Jack the Butcher and trying to identify the killer. But in reality, this is just a game. and the truth still remains shrouded in a veil of uncertainty. One of the fascinating aspects of Jack the Butcher is that, despite all the brutal murders he committed, he was never identified due to the lack of sufficient clues. Some believe that he may have hidden in plain sight among the very people and community he was a part of. This idea adds to the eerie mystery surrounding his case, suggesting that the killer might have been someone ordinary, blending seamlessly into the streets of Whitechapel. This story is not only one of the scariest criminal cases in history, but it also highlights the flaws in the legal and police systems of the time. Jack the Butcher became a serial killer not just because of his crimes, but because of the mystery that surrounded his name. Over time, he evolved into one of the greatest criminal legends, a figure whose true identity remains one of history's most chilling and unsolved puzzles. Will Jack the Butcher remain a part of criminal history forever, or will his identity one day be revealed? Until that secret is uncovered, the story of Jack the Butcher remains one of the most mysterious and thrilling criminal tales, continuing to captivate minds and spark curiosity. The enigma of his identity lingers, fueling speculation and fascination for generations to come. Crime never sleeps, so neither do we. Where light has no way, darkness speaks. So don't forget to subscribe and like so we can save you from the darkness.